Humanism is a philosophy informed by science, inspired by art, and motivated by compassion. Humanists strive to lead meaningful and ethical lives. We use reason and empathy to guide our decisions and actions. We live meaningful lives because we honor the fact that this is the only life of which we are certain. As humanists, we affirm the dignity and worth of all people. We do this not only to acknowledge all that humans have accomplished in the arts, the sciences, and humanities, but also simply for the possibility for peace and well-being when people interact with respect for one another. Our reading today is by Preston Seu. Preston, can you come on in?
This is from a interview from Richard Dawkins from last month on Quillette. And he was, the questioner asked, what are the challenges to science? And Richard Dawkins said, the challenge from religion hasn't gone away. It's still there, but I've written enough about that. I think there are new challenges coming from a sort of trendy philosophy, which possibly originated in France and became fashionable in America and Britain. This philosophy, in a rather incoherent way, casts doubt upon science, on rationality, on the idea that there is a real world which science is equipped to elucidate. It goes with the idea that your truth is yours and you're entitled to your truth, and evidence doesn't come into it. Or you could despise evidence. You can reject evidence. You can say, I have my own truth, and scientific evidence has nothing to do with it. In extreme cases, it really does look like a mistrust of scientific evidence. I think you probably know more about this than I do, but I think there's a tendency for people like me to concentrate too much on religion as the enemy of science and not realize there may be a new enemy of science rearing its head. From one of my favorites, Steven Weinberg. One of the great achievements of science has been, if not to make it impossible for intelligent people to be religious, then at least to make it possible for them not to be religious. We should not retreat from this accomplishment.
Thank you, Preston. Thank you so much for doing a reading this morning. The Humanists of Greater Portland is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. The American Humanist Association has developed 10 commitments, which are a gentle guide that recognizes behaviors that follow humanist principles. Our topic today, Bloodworks Northwest, incorporates the humanist commitments of altruism when people selflessly act for the welfare of other living beings without expectation of reward, recognition, or return. Donating blood is certainly a perfect example of this commitment. I'd now like to introduce our today's speaker. Lreagan is a passionate community engagement liaison with Bloodworks Northwest. She has dedicated the past 4 years promoting and facilitating blood donation opportunities throughout Southwest Washington and the Portland metro area. As a two-gallon blood donor herself, Lauren understands the life-saving importance of donation and is committed to inspiring others to contribute to this vital cause. Well,
good morning. My name is Lreagan. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. I put together a presentation today. You know, I go anywhere from explaining to elementary school kids to high schoolers the different facets of Bloodworks Northwest. And today I went from just not blood donation, but Bloodworks as a whole. We are an amazing organization. This May, we're going to be celebrating 81 years. We were originally the Puget Sound Blood Center. And then as we expanded, we rebranded in the early 2000s to Bloodworks. So just to go through, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about the history of blood banking. Being February, being Black History Month, Dr. Charles Drew is the most amazing person that I've ever been able to really read into. Being an African-American surgeon, he was able to basically become the father of blood banking during the mid 1900s. He discovered how to separate plasma from whole blood to be able to start banking blood, how to test it, make it stabilize so that it could go be shipped anywhere, whether it's the country. And it was really Great Britain tapped them during the Second World War because these soldiers that were overseas. So he became the medical director of the Blood for Britain project based in New York. They were able to collect over 14,000 units of blood to ship overseas. And that's kind of like where American Red Cross first kind of got started. In 1941, he went ahead and was named executive director of American Red Cross Blood Bank. And through that, he only stayed on for a year because American Red Cross decided that they wanted to segregate blood from whites and African Americans. And he didn't agree with that. So he resigned and continued to research and then teach. He is the inventor of blood mobiles, which is what I do. I do a lot of logistics on how to bring blood donation to the community where we can meet you at your place of worship or work instead of just having to come into a brick and mortar location. So we honor him this month every year at Bloodworks Northwest, and we continue his work. He really was ahead of his time in innovation when it came to science and research when it came to blood donation. We're named Bloodworks because blood is our business. That is what we do. I am a very small sector of our company because we are a nonprofit. We have a massive skyscraper in Seattle where we have entire floors that are dedicated to lab work. Any organ transplant that's going to be taking place in the Pacific Northwest, we do all the lab testing to make sure that those donors are going to be matched. We do stem cell research. We have researchers that are doing amazing things. Right now, there's one of our researchers is there a correlation to autoimmune disease in your blood type? Because there's the 8 basic blood type, but then there's additional, we could break it out by 121 different genetics. So making sure a diverse blood supply is really key because outside of those 8 basic blood types, here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a really high of Native American populations and Pacific Islanders that we may have a patient that could use somebody with the same ethnic background so that they have less reactions to their donations while they're being taken care of. So we have an amazing medical team that is working nonstop, and they are on call 24/7 to work with our hospital partners anytime an incident comes up where they need a little bit more in-depth research on how to better match a donor. We are the sole provider. 95% of the Pacific Northwest, we provide all of the blood for the hospitals. That number is growing. Just last week, we added another hospital in John Days, Oregon, where we provide all of their blood. Clark County, Washington, 100% of all the hospitals are serviced by Bloodworks. Here in the Portland Metro, we do all of Providence, Peace Health, Legacy hospitals, and that is growing every day. Bloodworks, we have a really amazing reputation, not here in just the Pacific Northwest, but also internationally. So we have hospitals that are continually asking us to become their blood provider. So we won't take on a hospital unless we are 100% confident that we can meet all of their needs and make sure that it's a safe, reliable blood supply. We don't want to take on new hospitals and then fall short of any major demand that they may or may not have. So talking about just the need, 1/3 of all the blood that we collect goes to anybody that is with chemotherapy, because chemotherapy can't delineate between what is a cancer cell, what is a white blood cell, what is a red blood cell, what is a platelet. It's just going to wipe out your entire body. So having blood transfusions while you're in cancer treatments is really key to helping, I always say fuel the fight for that donor. Trauma is what a lot of people think first off, that when, right, like who needs blood? People that have been car accidents, gunshot wounds, but it also is maternal hemorrhages. We have an amazing mother in Vancouver. She 5 years ago needed 37 units to save her life. She had baby number 3. Everything was routine. She ended up in a coma for 2 weeks. She needed so many different blood types because she suffered an amniotic fluid embolism. It's so great to see both her and her daughter survive that incident because most times either the mother or the child does pass away for that. Organ transplants, like I said, that we help support all the organ transplants in the Pacific Northwest and parts of Idaho because we have the massive lab facilities. And then just circling back to traumas too, we work with, I'm trying to think, just in the last 2 weeks, we had a gunshot victim that needed 70 units of blood. So that's 70 volunteers that stepped forward to donate blood to save that one life. And that's at one of 90 plus hospitals that we see. So that is why the need will never dissipate. There is no synthetic replacement for blood. We need people to step up, be donors, advocate for it to be able to help save lives in our community. Reality, so for Bloodworks Northwest, we say to keep a stable blood supply here for just Oregon and Washington, we need 1,000 people a day. We are currently seeing anywhere from about 550 to 700. So we are a little bit short coming out of the pandemic. I have another slide about high schools, but we lost our blood mobiles, our buses. We did not operate those for 3 years. We had to be really creative. Overnight, we had to cancel over 500 blood drives and rethink, right? We all heard the word pivot through 2020. We are an essential activity. So being able to collect blood and maintain that with our hospital. 10% of the population that can, so about 38% of the world population can, they are eligible to donate blood. Only about 10% of that actually do step up to donate. High schoolers, like I said, so prior to the pandemic, 25% of our region blood supply came from high school and college students. So that's 16 to 25. And we have all these different graphs where it's like 2020 hit and it just completely plummeted and disappeared for about 3 years. We are on the rebound. Going back to schools, we were at 8%. Last year, we were at about 15%. So we're hoping this year, it's been amazing. High schoolers are some of my favorite groups to work with. I was just at Benson Polytech down here on Friday, working with those students and to see how invested they are in their community and becoming blood donors. We meet a lot of teachers and folks. We have a woman in Seattle. She's almost 80 now. She started donating when she was 16 at her high school blood drive, and she has continued to donate throughout the years. When she had children, she had a little pause, but she still today, even at 80, donates blood. There is no there's an age minimum of 16. In the state of Washington, you do need parent permission. And being able to really develop that habit. So that's what we're working with our youth. And we have a lot of programs that we've been developing to really inspire them. So I'm going to just roll through a little bit of the blood donation process because you may have donated, you may not have. But I always say from check-in to cookie is about an hour is what you should plan for. Making sure that you have a photo ID. The FDA has a regulated, it's 42 questions. We're going to go through your individual health assessment. And that is something that Bloodworks has spent over a decade with the FDA to provide research to really, we want to evaluate everyone's individual health on surgeries, drug use, sexual activity. We want to, you are an individual and you all have different risks that may be associated with activities that you participate. So we really want to talk to you about that and all of them, any medications that you may be on. I meet a lot of people who are like, I'm diabetic, I can't donate. Yes, you absolutely can. If you're on antidepressants, you can absolutely. This last year, I learned a lot about people that are on epilepsy medicine because we have done the research that those medications do not interfere with your ability to donate blood. So you might think that you're unable to donate, but most of the time you actually can. Needle in arm, right now, oh gosh, everyone's averaging probably 5 to 6 minutes of the needle physically in your arm. But that can go up to 15 minutes depending on how hydrated you are. And then you get to hang out in our canteen, you get to eat snacks. So who doesn't love? That is the one thing. Helen saw me last weekend. I was at the chili cook-off and I was like, the one thing the blood bank will always have, we will have tons of cookies, juice, anything just to give out. And that's one of those events where we were not collecting blood, but we were letting kids, little 5, 6-year-olds, get on the bus, crawl into the bed. We would wrap their arm. We have coloring pages because we don't want anybody to fear us by the time they become high schoolers. So that's really fun. And I really enjoy being able to be out in the community to spread them. So during donation, we are heavily regulated by the FDA. We just went through an entire FDA audit. It takes about 3 days where they observe every step of a donation. Everything is protected by HIPAA. As soon as you chip in, the unit is converted into a barcode. for privacy, but we can also track all of those. So 45 to 60 minutes, start to finish, and then blood draw time, like I said, max is going to be around 15 minutes, but most people average about that 5 to 6 minute mark. Preparing for your donation. This is something I do with the high schoolers. I'm like, you have to eat. I'm like, you got to eat and you got to drink and make sure that you're hydrated. At high school blood drives, they always kind of help me giggle because I compensate coffees because teenagers tend to be a little bit anxious, and that Red Bull from Dutch Brothers, those really big drinks. I'm like, your heart rate's going to be out of control. So let's dial it back, drink some water. You're going to have a great day. But they love it because we bring on Crustables and all the Hostess cupcakes. We bring all of the great food because we really want them to have such a positive experience. I'm a millennial, and my age group they don't donate. They'll be like, I tried to donate in high school. I faked it. It was terrible. I never want to go near a person again. So I work really hard to make sure that these high schoolers have really positive experiences. And we even rolled out an honor cord program. If you get 4 donations in by graduation, we give you a cord to honor that half-gallon mark. So we really appreciate and love our high schoolers. The impact is huge. You're going to make a difference. That's the one thing I love about Chubb. I get to save lives every day. We do have our Thank the Donor program where we attach every red cell unit that goes out, has a little green heart that the nurse can rip off and hand to a family member. That family member can then scan it, send an email. We get caught, Bloodworks receives every single one, but it actually will go backwards. So if there's potential that you can get an email from a mother whose son was in a motorcycle accident and you help save their lives. And being able, on any of the hard days, you sit there and you get all these messages and you hear, husbands thanking you for saving their wives and their babies. Parents being able to have additional units of blood so that like during their cancer treatment that they hit remission and now they get to go on those vacations. It's so amazing. We have our 1,000 Thank You campaign that's starting up again this spring. So we actually go to those patients and they get to say thank you because they may not know who saved their lives. Last year, I did a morning talk show here in Portland with Deputy Trotter, Mike Trotter from Washington County. You may have remembered his story from 2022. He was T-boned by a DUI. They were going over 100 miles an hour. He was trapped in his car for 2 hours. Because the fire department, they actually realized there was a gap in their training. Like, how do you cut into one of those secure patrol vehicles? He was hospitalized for over 6 weeks, received 97 units of blood to save his life. We didn't, it was questionable whether or not we'd walk again. And when we did the grand opening a year ago of our Beaverton Center, he walked in the door and I was like, can I give you a hug? I was like, I worked with the chaplain. I worked with the sheriff. I did a press conference with his wife, and she was so inspiring because she said, she's sitting in the hospital because they called us, maybe like 2 or 3 days. They had the chaplain reach out to Bloodworks. She's like, I've never donated blood. She's like, I've been asked and I've always said no, didn't make time, didn't make it a priority. And she's like, I'm just sitting here being like, close to 100 people saved my husband. He had a little toddler at the time. And she's like, he gets to, have his dad around because of all these strangers. So she was so brave and I applaud her. She went ahead and did her first blood donation ever on camera with like every news station. Imagine like being on the donor bed with like, I think there was 8 or 9 photographers. She did fantastic. And it's just been such a pleasure. And then now I get to work with Mike, and Mike is a really big advocate to inspire people, just being like, hey, thank you for saving my life. How can we push it on? And the Washington County Sheriff's Department has really made that mission. Within that first 6 months, they inspired over 700 donations from Washington County to come out to just kind of repay it and pay it forward. So this is just a quick little video. So it just kind of shows a little bit of where your blood is going to go. And then this is a quick little video about another story. This is a scout story.
We're probably not as good.
We're not going to hear. You're not going to hear. I will also send out this presentation so you guys can have it. Got the captions on there.
Here. Those times, you can taste it. Alright. Yes, now it's got progressively sicker and sicker.
So is nobody hearing it?
Right, it's just read
I think soon.
So
These there's closed caption.
There you go.
Yeah, I've got captions.
That's how I listen to all my British movies.
Find close your eyes. Obviously, the cheers talking here.
To everyone, we can read the captions. That's good. Oh,
Something so simple as to do this with the aim and the reflect. So I know. Whenever they call me, I sign up and I go down there and I bring a scout. I want her to see what it is. What's happening.
it's like the friend rock.
Policy. So generous.
My life was one of the scout actually used the guards didn't know this person. They helped keep a little girl alive.
What?
So this is some really common things that pop up. I see people all the time, they're like, I'm getting tattooed, I can't donate. The FDA has done a ton of rollbacks and I've got another slide on it, but as long as it's at a licensed facility, you can donate after getting a tattoo. I personally have done it. I think I got a new tattoo and then like 3 days later donated. Flu, any vaccines, COVID vaccine, flu shot, as long as you are feeling good the day of donation, you are 100%. Iron levels right now, Pacific Northwest, right? We don't see a lot of sunlight. So we tend to see in these winter months, low iron. So making sure you eat iron-rich foods, but that's why we do a little health screening. We always test your iron before we go ahead. Traveling, and if you might think that you're not eligible, I met a gentleman at the Rotary. He's like, I'm 85, I'm too old. I was like, no, I was like, Ralph, I was like, it actually more is dependent on your medication. So he called, we have a nurse's line, that's what our eligibility, because they can run through your individual medical history and let you know whether or not. And he called me and he's like, thank you so much, Lauren. He's like, you made this old man feel like I have a purpose, because he's like, I'm eligible, I can come in and donate. And now he comes in and stops at our center. You know, he's not like every 8 weeks on the nose, but like 2-3 times a year, Ralph comes in and he, you know, it's something to do and gets to meet our staff and hang out with us. And he said, you know, thank you. Because he's like, I really didn't think I was useful anymore at my age, and being able to be part of my community and still give back. So I absolutely love and encourage everyone, is like, if you have anything that you might think you may or may not be able to donate, you know, call our nurses. That's what they're there for, is to be able to help review with you. You can partner. A lot of people, especially high schools, I got the little teeny tiny girls that are maybe 90 pounds soaking wet that are not eligible to donate blood, but they host the blood drive. They run it with, you know, they do all the marketing, get everyone to come in. We do virtual drives. This was a brainchild of COVID. So right now we have the Oregon Nurses Association is doing a virtual drive. All those Providence nurses that are on the strike line, we've seen close to 200 of them since the strike started. About not even, well, I think we're at day 30 now. So they're coming out and donating because they know their patients still need them, and this is a way that they can give back during this time period. Financial contributions go towards research to keep funding all those different research projects that we have. And then you can volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers, wide variety of projects, or even coming out. I would love, well, Helen saw me last weekend at the Chili Festival. I had no volunteers. So my 12-year-old son is very well versed in Bloodworks and all things. And he's able to like help speak on it. but being a community ambassador, if you have a teaching background, we have a Stop the Bleed program that you can help go into schools, volunteer your time to teach kids different things. So there's wide variety, even data entry for different projects. You can reach out to our volunteer team. The blood emergency readiness corps. This is something Bloodworks joined about 2 years ago. This is the list of community blood centers across the United States. And prior to, I want to say like 2018, 2019, if there was a mass trauma incident, right? We're talking mass shooting, weather events, there's all these different things. There was no plan in place. It was the blood center would be like, hi, I need help. Who can spare any extra blood? So now this is a coalition. We have come together and we rotate where we're on call for 2 weeks. So if there is an emergency, there's 5 blood banks that we've already put aside, O negative or O positive. O positive is the most common blood type. O negative is the universal donor. So if there is a traumatic incident or a hospital needs support, there's blood banks that are on call for that. We signed our agreement and we joined this, and then the next day was the Uvalde school shooting. And being on the other side was so enlightening because I'm seeing what's on the news, but then I'm also seeing the messages that are going through this, where they were still calling for emergency shipments, which I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, they need more blood. That means there's people still fighting for their lives. We were activated for New Orleans terrorist attack that they just had in January. And then, 2 weeks ago, we had shipped blood to Shreveport, Louisiana, and Texas. They're not made for snow. They don't know how to navigate. And a lot of it is they stopped collections. As of right now, we are all on call for Los Angeles, greater area. It's not that they have mass trauma, it's that they're not collecting blood in LA currently. So it's how long can they sustain without collecting? So we are all ready to answer that call if LA does call needing blood. So that's just something newer. It's a plan, it's just a sad reality of where we live, is that more and more there's bigger weather events and mass transfusion accidents that they need support. So Bloodworks and all of these different community blood banks have teamed together to make sure that the nation does have blood when an emergency arises. So a couple of different things that rolled back.
Why are so many of those states gray?
So that means they have not opted into the program yet. So it's a growing thing. So it started with 5. Now it's growing. I think we're up to 25. So it's as people are going and slowly growing. So FDA started through research, anything that was like a permanent deferral in the past, they have rolled back where it's like, hey, the science will prove otherwise. So if everyone remembers 80s, 90s mad cow, right? Like there is such this fear around it. As of 2023, they lifted that. So I still meet people every day. They're like, I served overseas in England, I can't donate. I went to school in Scotland, can't donate. And it's like, no, actually, it's really exciting. You can. I met a woman, we were at a church blood drive, and she's like, I was a blood donor. It was something my dad brought me to when I was 16. And that was just like, my dad, that was our thing. And she's like, then I went to college overseas. And I was like, no, I was like, you can donate today. And she was almost in tears. She's like, I've never felt closer to my dad and being able to honor him in an activity that they did. So we're always trying to get that information out. One that was much more publicized was we went the new era of blood donation, is the MSM deferral that was in the 80s when the peak of the AIDS epidemic, where men that had sex with men was a permanent deferral. Then they rolled it back where it's like, all right, you had to be celibate for 12 months, then 6 months, 3 months. Now it has officially, we just celebrated 1 year. And that's where that FDA questionnaire, we're really assessing everyone's individual health. When the FDA lifted that made over 300,000 gay men in the country were eligible to donate blood again. And it's been really exciting to see them being able to come, because they were just deferred for the sake of who they loved and who they cared about. So it's been amazing to see that community be able to be brought in and really recognized by the FDA and the blood donation community.
I have a question
Yes.
on that. Being a part of that community, what is the stance on men that are taking Truvada, the doxypep, all that sort of stuff right now? What's the medication stance on that?
So as of right now, if you're on the medication, that is a deferral.
Okay.
I would have to do a little bit more digging because I'm not sure, because some medications, right? It's like you can't be on it for 2 weeks, a month, 3 months. We're in the next phase of research. So we've been working, we had an amazing community in Seattle. They would, men were coming in to like give samples so we could prove to the FDA, we're like, here's the science behind it. So that's kind of like, we're in the next phase now where we are testing men that are using PrEP to be like, to provide the evidence to the FDA being like, hey, how long should the deferral be? Yeah. So okay. we made this one big hurdle. It took us a little over 10 to 15 years to get there. So now we're in that next phase. We're really excited. Bloodworks Bio, which is our bio division, our vice president is an openly gay man. And he, you know, he did a lovely presentation to us because he's like, my friends are like, how could you work for a company that doesn't allow you to? He's like, oh, I'm gonna like help change it. So Aaron Posey's been such an amazing advocate to really like move this forward. And it's something that Bloodworks is very passionate about, that we want to get this, you know, through the FDA and make it science-based. This is not a political thing. We're like, here's the data, here's the numbers, like this is, and you know, like blood thinners interact. So we're doing the research to figure out like, how does PrEP interact with the testing for the different bloodborne illnesses? Yes.
I was diagnosed with hepatitis 30 years ago. Am I still a no-no?
It depends. So that's one of those I would defer.
Anything?
I would defer to our nursing team because there may be, because there's like malaria. I know you can donate if you've had malaria as long as you hadn't had it in the last 12 months, a positive test. So there's a lot of different criteria for individual based health assessments. So hepatitis, I'm not 100% off the top of my head of what the criteria would be, but we do test. So every time we take a unit of blood, it goes to our lab in Renton. We have a whole facility there. We test for 17 different bloodborne illnesses.
May I suggest holding questions until the end?
So, well, got just a couple more. I always encourage everyone, especially my high schoolers, to find your why. So I have identical twin sons, and this is my oldest, Declan. In 2016 was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, which is extremely rare. He was at Randall's Children and then over at OHSU. During 2 years of treatment, he received 76 blood transfusions and 108 platelet transfusions. In January 2018, he was declared terminal, right? So we had to have that really hard conversation. He was 5 years old at the time. We had a set list of, I'm like, all right, if I can get him to his next birthday, which was in March, and like these different things. So you get to a point when you're in treatment and, you know, he had 2 bone marrow transplants that failed. In 2 years, we spent over 200 days in the hospital. We flew to St. Jude's, and actually having been a patient, those commercials are exactly how they portray themselves. So I can't say enough about St. Jude's, like amazing people. But it came down to like time, effort, like what do we want to do? What did he want to do? So we worked with Peace Health Hospital because he was going through hospice there, and he stopped treatment and he got blood transfusions twice a week. It worked out, the stars aligned. There was a NICU nurse at Peace Health Southwest in Vancouver because, you know, when you're talking time, a blood transfusion takes about 8 hours to transfuse because you want to make sure there's no reaction. To drive to Dornbecker from Vancouver, sit for 8+ hours plus traffic. So this NICU nurse, she was like, well, I used to do bone marrow transplants in Seattle. I know how to use his ports and stuff. So they rearranged her work schedule from the NICU to be able to twice a week. He was her sole patient, and it was amazing. When we left Dornbeckers, they said he had 2 weeks to live. And I was like, I'll see you. You know, they're like, if you get this far, I was like, all right, I'll see you in February. Thanks to blood donors, specifically from Bloodworks Northwest, I got 5 extra months. So they gave me 2 weeks, I got 5 months. And in the span of he made it to his 6th birthday. We got to do tons of stuff. He got to go see my boys. So this is like my memorial tattoo, dinosaurs. We got to go to Hawaii so we could see where Jurassic World was filmed. We got to see the new Jurassic film came out because that was like the last big goal. And what's amazing is that we went to Bloodworks, and this was actually on his last, the picture in the middle was his last birthday. And we went to all the Bloodworks Northwest blood drives that were happening that day and dropped off donuts. When it came to his memorial service, the phlebotomist actually came to his memorial. And then circle back 2 years after his passing, I decided to start working at Bloodworks. My first day of work were some of those phlebotomists that were the last time I saw them were at my son's memorial service. And gosh, I just love them so much. And they, you know, we know our stories, we work together, and they know how much of an impact it made. So truly, because of blood donors, I got that extra 5 months, and I could never repay that individually as donating. So that's like one of the reasons. And actually, that picture with him on the bus in the background on my laptop, because it's what I'm thinking. Because as a mom in the hospital, not once did I ever think there wouldn't be blood. In 2020, about 6 months into my employment, we were in really bad shape for the blood bank, and our medical team had to put out parameters to the hospitals. They're like, this is what we can and cannot do. I started getting calls from families being like, my loved one could really use a blood transfusion, but they said they're not that sick, you know, like they had to like try to like rush, and it was awful. It was an awful feeling. Thankfully, we have kind of rebounded out of that. So for us to say a stable blood supply, we want in our blood bank in Renton to have every single hospital, they contract it out. It's like, we estimate we need this much blood every week. We have all those contracts to build plus 3 days worth. You may have seen me, I was on Coin Extras 2 weeks ago because we called a code red emergency. And what that means is that for 3 consecutive days, we have dropped into emergency levels. And that's where we're like, we need everyone to show up. This is the time, because we don't want to get back into that instance. And the reason we do that, it's 3 consecutive days, is that when your blood goes to the lab, all those 17 different diseases that we test for, bloodborne pathogens, those testing takes 72 hours. So we never know, like it might drop into emergency levels. The next day, all the blood from over the weekend passed its testing and it's on the shelves. So when it's 3 days in a row that we are not getting enough units, or we might just have an infant. So that week that we called code red, we had a patient that needed 100 units. Then we had somebody in liver failure that needed another 20. Then that's when Texas and Louisiana, and that's when the fires in LA started. And we're like, okay, we need to plan for the future. What is the next couple of weeks going to look like? So I always encourage everyone to find their why. This is just, you know, it's such a small act, an hour out of your day to be able to come in and you get snacks. And I could say the phlebotomists out of Vancouver, I've been poked by all of them. They are fantastic. We have a wide variety of staff that they will chat with you about all sorts of stuff. We have a podcast, Bloodworks One-on-One. It covers all the different things, right? We try to be as minimal waste. There's an amazing podcast where cadaver dogs in Seattle, we give them any extra blood that we might not need for testing anymore, because they need blood to be able to train cadaver dogs. So we really try to eliminate all as much waste as we can. So we help support cadaver dog training. Our different Kurt Bailey, who's our CEO, has done an episode. I done one about my son Declan. So you get to hear all different stories from patients, doctors. We tested it in Seattle, and it's going to Pierce County next, where we're actually keeping units of blood on ambulances so that when they arrive on scene, they can start transfusions of blood to help save somebody's life. So being able, that stopgap between somebody being in a motor vehicle accident and getting to the hospital, being able to start blood transfusions on scene, every minute counts at that point, but when transporting. So we're really excited that hopefully that we can help save more lives with that. And then this is all my information. So if your employer, you personally, if you know another organization that you want to plan blood drives, my team currently works. We do anywhere from 5 to 7 blood drives a week. So that is neat. Every week on repeat. We would love to come out and be able to, engage with a new group to be able to really let everyone know who Bloodworks is. Because that's the one thing I found, that a lot of people still do not know who we are and that we are providing. So if you end up at Legacy Emmanuel Hospital in a trauma situation, the blood is coming from Bloodworks. So I open it up for questions.
And Lauren, yep.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I have had received blood. Back when I was 13 years old, it was my very first period, and I almost bled to death. Nobody picked it up because for a long time, for about a week. And when my mother found me on the bathroom floor, passed out, I went to the hospital and had to receive 2 units of blood. Back in 1964. So I am a blood donor, and I do donate to Bloodworks Northwest, and they're wonderful. I mean, it's really fun. I know and you get a physical. There's a bit of a physical involved. Because they test your hematocrit. You go through this series of questions, and
we do blood pressure checks. We check your heart rate. We had an employee in Boeing up in Seattle, and our tech was like, "Oh, there's something wrong. Like, went to the emergency room, ended up with an open heart surgery that day." They're like, and the doctor was like, "Honestly, you probably would have died at work and nobody would have known. It was just that he happened to go in to donate blood that it was caught." It's just like one of those. So we always say like those mini health exams are fantastic. And with our new app, I can actually bring up every donation, and I can look at what my blood pressure was, what my heart rate was, so I can like go to my doctor and be like, something was off here.
Yeah, and the staff is just wonderful. I give it Mary Woods is where I try to donate. Yeah. It's a really fun location, but I've done the blood mobiles as well, and it's a great organization. If any, and the sign up is pretty easy. You've got a little calendar, and and we try to make regular locations. So Mary was in Lake Oswego. I actually talked to Amanda there, and we booked the full year. So that when you're there, you're like, hey, 9 a.m. was a great time. They'll schedule your next appointment for you. Okay, Jules, why don't you come in and ask your question?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Then come on in, buddy.
Does this card tell you anything?
I see Gallon on there.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Gallon Club.
Yes.
And they told me at age 65 that they will not take my blood after that age level because they feel I'd be at risk, low iron, et cetera, et cetera. Is that still in place? Do you have an age limit on donors?
We do not. It's based on your individual health. So if you're on any medications, but like I said, we have donors. I think the oldest donor we currently have that's active is about 95.
Isn't that interesting? Okay, the other quick question I have is iron content. Iron is a double-edged sword. So when I was giving all that blood, it wasn't totally altruistic, having been in cancer research myself. Iron in excess can be carcinogenic. So going in and donating blood lowers your iron stores as long as you're not below a certain level. So you're not worried about that component so much. It is an inducement. If you're a heavy red meat eater, to give blood 2-3 times a year to lower your iron stores because you're getting loads of iron in your diet.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of people, they've even done the research where if you donate at least twice a year, your chance of having a heart attack drops by about 80%. What? So if you just for your heart health to come out and donate, we absolutely love it. And we do, that's why we test, prick your finger. And a lot of people say the finger poke hurts more than the actual needle in the arm. But we go on and test, and we do that. And then we do have hematoma-fibrosis patients. So those are people that have an excess of red blood cells. So their doctors, we actually have different patients that they get almost like a prescription, but they're like, they need this much red blood cells removed from their body on it might be a weekly basis or bi-weekly. So that's something that they set up through their doctor's office, through our labs, and then they schedule appointments. Because for the most normal donor like myself, you can donate every 56 days, 8 weeks. So when you need to have blood donation every 2 to 3 weeks, there's some paperwork involved in that, but the great thing is that through lab research, before they used to just toss that blood, and they've actually through our lab facilities, that blood is transfusible because there is nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's just their body is naturally producing too many red cells.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a questioner Here, we have a question number one. Jen?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. I'm a pretty regular donor to American Red Cross because the facility is pretty easy for me to get to from my house. But I had no knowledge of Bloodworks Northwest before this presentation. So could you describe the landscape for nonprofit blood donation organizations?
Yeah,
In the local area?
in the local area, yeah. So the kind of like the way blood banking works is that hospitals contract with a blood bank. So there's community ones, and then there is American Red Cross. American Red Cross is also, we've seen them in LA or even locally, disaster relief. So they are really focused on that, and then blood donation. They kind of meet the gaps on hospitals that don't have contracts with the local blood bank, or they'll send their blood, kind of like where the need is. So that's how it kind of works here locally. And hospitals also, right, like they're never going to get in a bind. So they have a first, secondary, and tertiary blood contractors. That's why we always say that we are the sole provider, because we're in the #1 spot for the majority of the hospitals. We have been approached by other hospitals in Portland, but like we want to make sure that we have a really safe blood supply before we take on additional hospitals, because we don't want to fall short of our commitments. So that is part of the reason calling Code Red ahead of time when we see those things changing and as we increase and grow. So for the Portland Metro, we've been in Vancouver for 13 years, which is crazy to think. And then we just last year opened Beaverton. 2-3 months ago, we opened up a center in Puyallup. And all of those brick and mortars, there's 15 in total. So we're from Bellingham all the way to Eugene, Oregon, has 1 or 2 mobiles that go within a certain range. So my team goes from Castle Rock in Cowlitz County, Washington to Oregon City, all the way to Hood River. So, all those different ones that we're collecting. So as we expand, and one of our, I think it's like a 10 or 20-year goal is that we want to be the sole provider for the entire state of Washington and Oregon. So we continue to work through that, but we want to make sure that we're doing it in a responsible way and safely grow that. So, and as far as like a nonprofit, yeah, we're a nonprofit, 501c3. All of our financials are readily available that you can look for. So a lot of people will say that we're a for-profit. We are not. The hospitals task us so that they don't have to do it, because it is an endeavor to maintain. We have a fleet of over 500 vehicles, unfortunately, like there is a cost to running vehicles and maintenance and repairs for those. So there is some fees associated with that.
We have a question from Polly, who's attending on Zoom. Does your group have any affiliation with the Red Cross?
We do not.
Is there a second question? Is that would be question or two? Okay.
Yes. Okay. If you wanted to host a blood collection, is there a certain number you really expect you would want to come for to give the blood, and a certain number of people for donations? So if you only had like 15, would that be enough?
I've accepted groups that have maybe 5, but for us a big thing is being able to open it to the public, being able to that, because it might, where your office might be located, might be a place where we don't have blood drives often. I met a gentleman, I was at the Harmony campus for Clackamas Community College, and he's like, hey, I live in Happy Valley. I donate in Oregon City. I donate, he hops around and he's like, but you don't have anything in Happy Valley. I was like, thank you so much for letting me know that that's a need for that area, and being able to open it. Because some businesses like Boeing, it's a closed campus, HP, Intel, right? We can only open up blood drives to their employees, but we still go out. So we've gone out with 5 appointments, but then we like last weekend, we weren't collecting blood. We were there for the kids. We probably turned away like 11 to 15 people that they're like, hey, I haven't donated blood. I should probably do that, because we had our bus parked in the convention center or the expo center.
It was really cool. They had this giant bus and kids could just run around and play it and get their you had your cookies though.
We had our cookies and coloring pages, and they got to wrap their arms. They thought they were so cool. So I'm a big component of making sure that kids are not afraid of donating.
Another question here from a Zoom member: are the donation sites on the are there donation sites on the east side of Portland?
East side.
That'd be over
City.
East of 82nd.
Like east of
Yeah, I'm trying to, like, off the top of my head, I'm like, we were at Hood River last week. That's a little bit too
That's
far.
too far.
I'm trying to think, like, Southeast, we have St. Philip Mary's Church, has been such a great partner with us that we host monthly blood drives there. Providence Office Park, we're in POP 2 in their conference center on a bi-monthly. So I always recommend go to our website, put in your zip code, and it'll populate. So you can do anything for the next day, week, month. And if there's a whole, like my email address, I've got business cards and they'll go out. Please email me and be like, Lauren, what you doing? Like, you need to be out in Gresham. I think closest we've got Columbia Place Assisted Living is now hosting our bus. So that's kind of out there. We have a phone number you can call, and we have an entire, we have an amazing call center team, and most likely you're probably gonna get Iva Rose. She does a lot of the Southwest Portland area. Anytime it pops up, she usually emails me, and they can connect you with the nurses for your medical history questions that are medications that you're on, and they can also help navigate and schedule your appointment or a location that's closest. So they're amazing, and they work 7 days a week.
And questioner number 3? Yeah, 3. Oh, 3. Go ahead, Ian.
I just wanted to ask, it's a personal, one thing, I mentioned it to you, but when we were outside, I'm a tough stick. They have to go to my hand to do anything. Is there a way that I can donate that, or is there some other way that I could help?
Yeah, so volunteering is always a go-to because we need, or sharing the words, sharing
And
the
you got one in Beaverton, you said?
Yep, we have a brick and mortar facility. We just opened it. October was a year.
I live in Aloha, so that'd be a
yeah. Come in, help volunteer.
Okay.
And the nice thing is, if you are a difficult stick, we have one of our phlebotomists is about to celebrate 30 years with Bloodworks.
Yeah.
So it's really great because we have a wide variety. That's not just people that have been employed here for 6 months. There are people. Gosh, we had 2 phlebotomists celebrate 20 years this summer. 10, 15. Now we have our big 30-year. We got surprises planned for him coming up here in March. And we also have, and I tell the high schools, we have a 2-poke policy. If we can't get you on one arm, we might do another, but we will also switch phlebotomists. As much as there is a need for blood, we're not here to sit there and poke you like a pin cushion and blow every vein in your arm.
Normally takes like 4 pokes.
Yeah, so we are a 2-poke policy because we want to make sure that you actually have an enjoyable experience with us. We don't want to send you home all black and blue.
All right.
Question number 4.
Just a quick one. I have leukemia, but I'm not on any medication right now. So do I need to call the
So I do know this one off the top of my head. If you've ever had leukemia or lymphoma, you unfortunately would not be able to donate for the remainder of your life because those are blood cancers. Now, say you had breast cancer, brain cancer, any tumor-based cancer, as long as you've been off of chemotherapy for over 12 months, you are eligible to donate again. But any of those blood cancers or lymphomas, unfortunately, you would be deferred. But you can share your story, you can volunteer, you can really get people to come out and donate because there are other ways to get back. Because I have a high schooler that had leukemia when he was 3 and he was really disappointed, but then he got the entire football team to he was like, come on, guys. The girls always want to donate, and it's getting those football players, and they really do enjoy it. And it's great for him to be able to share. He's like, yes, he's like, I was a little guy, but he's like, I'm here today, and really encouraging other people to donate on behalf of you.
We have a question from Hank Robb. The current federal administration appears to be on the way to limiting or eliminating federal funds for nonprofits. How much of Bloodworks money comes from the federal government?
That is a great question. Unfortunately, I do not know. I know a lot of our research, majority of military bases on the West Coast, we do all their blood testing. So like we have one of our regular stops. When our courier picks up blood from Vancouver, he has to stop at JBLM to pick up all of their blood samples for the day. So there's funds that come from that, and then our hospital partners. So I'm not 100% sure. We expect, the last couple of weeks, right? It's like repeals, then it's fine. It's up and down. So our heads of funding and our CFO has not sent us anything as of right now. You know, we're in the business of saving lives, and we're going to keep doing that and groundbreaking research. If that is one of those, you know, I know we had an endowment from somebody that had willed us over $1.2 million this past year. So we do have some donations that do come in. So TBD on that, kind of like similar to a lot of things in the next coming weeks, but business as usual right now for Bloodworks.
Do you still need to weigh 110 pounds to donate?
Yes. So if you are over the age of 18, it's 110 pounds. If you're 16, 17-year-olds, we do 125 pounds. And the reasoning behind that is that there's a reason we don't take blood from small little children. That pint, when we take from somebody that is, you know, that magic number of 110, it's gonna, the chances of your blood pressure dropping, right? We're gonna be taking fluid out of you, and the risk of like damaging your health is higher. So that's why they have that standard. So yeah, that's kind of like, you know, we're here to, as much as we need blood, we want to do it safely. We do not want to be sending any of you to the hospital for that. So that's why some of those requirements are in there.
Bill Box sent just his applause. It's cute. There's a whole bunch of applause on his
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah. Is there a question number 4? Question number 5.
Some people give blood for money. Do you handle that transaction?
So the FDA actually prevents payment for products. So you might be thinking of plasma centers.
Okay, that's it. Yeah.
So plasma centers that are in, so the reason the FDA has it is that people are more like, if you're monetizing something, you're going to get paid. The likelihood of them lying about their health background is much higher. So if there's anything that like that somebody is being paid for cannot be transfused to another human. You know, like that is an FDA regulation. So a lot of those plasma donations are, I found out like it wasn't until I started this job that they're used for medical research, and then they're a lot used for cosmetics. And then it's sold overseas for different things. So as far as like the current FDA, you cannot transfuse any products that have been monetized.
There's a lovely comment from Jill Bach. Just a comment. As a mother and woman, I admire you deeply. As a cardiovascular RN of 33 years, I thank you for your important work. This donation information is so important to get out to the public. You are helping us save lives at my current employer.
Well, thank you so much. And they actually just reached out a couple of weeks ago about hosting a blood drive for the clinic, and they're gonna, you know, we didn't schedule anything, but we're actually already scheduled at POP 2, so they're gonna be. You probably will see flyers coming around about the March 12th blood drive at POP 2. Okay, thank you.
Anand asks, could you elaborate on which blood types are most in demand at blood banks, and if certain types are particularly crucial?
Yeah, so we love our O's. O positive is international, like we're looking globally. 39% of the world population has O positive. Fun fact, Pacific Northwest, we're at 43% of our population is O positive. So it's always really fun because high schoolers are like, what's my blood type? I'm like, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be O positive. O negative is the universal donor, right? So that means if you're in that high intense trauma situation there and they don't, you know, it takes like less than 10 minutes to type in screen blood, but they're going to transfuse O negative to save your life. So we want to make sure that we always have a really healthy supply of our O negatives. I'm A positive, and if you look at my business card, it's really fun. Bloodworks, all of us employees, our business cards have our blood types on it. It's in our email signatures, and so it's really fun when you're interacting with a new person in the lab, and you're like, oh man, you're O positive. Like, did you donate this week? So yeah, so those are the ones that we're always, but all blood types are important to have a bank full. It's just what is the ratio that we're going to be keeping. AB negative is one of the most rarest, less than 9% worldwide has that blood type. So we don't need to keep thousands of units of AB negative on hand. But it's always really interesting because we do keep such a small amount. When it's like, when it goes in emergency, I was like, oh, there was a patient. There was one single patient somewhere that needed their AB negative, and then we replenish with the donors that we have on file. So yeah, O negative and O positive, we love you. If you can come out and donate, we really appreciate it to be able to keep that. But O positive is the we like to try to keep around 2,000 units on hand. And when you do donate, like I said, 72 hours till it's on the shelves. Whole blood has a shelf life of 42 days. So we can hold on to it. We do minimum waste. So we might have that small little hospital in John Day, Oregon. If they have units of red cells that are going to be expiring soon, we'll actually shift it over to one of our high, right? Like, so we're shifting it to Legacy Emmanuel. One patient, they can go through hundreds of units in a day. So we're always shifting inventory because we have couriers that are running up and down the I-5 corridor throughout the day. If there is an emergency, like Natasha's story, we send an ambulance. We'll life flight it if needed. So we have those resources at hand.
We couldn't do modern surgery. We couldn't do surgery without blood banking.
Yes.
Absolutely impossible. I mean, not impossible, but pretty close.
Yeah. I mean, there's different things like after COVID, right? COVID, when they stopped all the elective surgeries, we're talking like hip, knee replacement, shoulders and stuff like that. It was like, oh, okay, we're doing okay. But in order for you to have a hip replacement, they need to take 5 units of blood, put it in standby in that OR in case you need it. So, then we started when everyone was like, all right, we're backlogged on all these surgeries. It was all the elective surgeries, making sure that we had it on hand. Because you may or may not need those units of blood, but a surgeon's not going to go and do it unless they have it on hand. So we want to make sure that we have that blood ready for if and when it's needed. If not, as long as it's properly stored, which all of our hospitals do, we will have it on hand, and then it'll just go back into general inventory.
The unit is a pint, right?
Yes, and I want to say it's like 400 something mils of milliliters. So we have, when you make a donation, it's whole blood. So it's got plasma, which is that vitamin rich. I always tell the kids, I'm like, you know how they say you're 60% water? It's plasma. That's that vitamin rich water that's transporting your red cells, your platelets, and your white cells. So when the lab takes it, they separate the plasma because plasma can be frozen. And that's for like burn victims. They actually use it a lot in maternal hemorrhaging. And then those red cell units are very concentrated. So it's a whole pint, and then it gets, I always say spun out. I'm going to have a lab visit just so I know. I'll be like, do you guys actually, are you there spinning it? Because I'm like, in my mind, I feel like that's how it works. That then you get those concentrated red cells that you need.
Question, Dave.
So I donate platelets on a regular basis, although I had to cut back when I had some surgery. And I looked around at what the scene was. I don't remember hearing you say that you guys accept platelets, but I'd like to hear the answer to that. And the second is I noticed that various places in the country have sites that will pay for platelets the same way that sites pay for plasma. Portland doesn't have any of those. I've been going to the Red Cross to do all my donations. What is the platelet situation?
Yep. So we do platelets, which is an apheresis procedure. So like I said, that, whole blood, it's going to take 5 to 6 minutes. When you are donating platelets, it's about an hour and a half. So you are on an apheresis machine. They take your whole blood, they're spinning it out. They mix your red cells and your plasma with an anticoagulant. So it's usually 30-second draw, 10 seconds of pushback. So, right. So it's an hour and a half.
Where I used to be actually on one in each arm, and I'd be in the bed for 2 hours, and then there'd be another hour of questionnaires and getting out of there. So it was a 3-hour procedure. Basically.
Yep. So we do it in about an hour and a half or so, and it's only one arm, which is great. So we will scratch your nose if you have an itch. We will give you candy. We have some moms that donate, and they're like, "This is like my vacation. I can read my book. We have Netflix at all of our centers so people can watch TV. We wait on you hand and foot. It's the best hour and a half of your life. Platelets are really interesting because their shelf life is only 5 to 7 days after they leave the body. So that's where those couriers come into play, right? So my son, platelets help you, like when you get bruised, they help you coagulate. So like as a small little 4-year-old, telling him in the hospital not to jump off the bed, the doctors are like, another head injury from this kid. They're like, awesome. But you get like a goose egg really fast and you bruise really fast when you do not have platelets. So he needed platelet transfusions to make sure that he could stay as safe as we could make him during his treatment. But platelets, and there's chemotherapy patients need those the most. And yeah, it's a great turnaround time. As far as incentivizing programs, there are some that are in the works. I think there's some loopholes that they're working with the FDA. That's not like my specialty realm, so I don't like to like 100% guarantee anything like that. I know they're working on it because of testing that goes into it, and I think there's like some other parameters. So I know they're working on it because there was a center that opened in Beaverton. It opened its doors for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then they closed down, boarded up shop, and left town. So we're really like, because we keep an eye on like our competitors or anybody. It was just like this really weird thing. It was like they opened and then they immediately like locked doors, left, and we had no idea what happened. So I think, you know, FDA is really watching all the things that we do because we are transfusioning into humans.
Just a comment again from Jill. She just mentioned we don't do cardiovascular surgery on patients who will not accept blood. So you have to be willing to accept blood if you're going to have surgery in most hospitals.
Yeah, and right now there's a lot of I'll post on Facebook groups, especially over in Code Red, and this past week I actually had to delete my post because it got very heated in the comment section. There's a lot of people that want segregation of blood of people that have been vaccinated with COVID or not, and it leads to very heated debates. As of right now, like we do not segregate based on any vaccinations that you have had. A lot of the comments from the public is like, if you're dying, I don't think you're gonna say no to those things. So still more to come. I know there is a big push in Europe from some people that really want blood to be segregated, and we are trying to be inclusive because we always say like we're all bound by blood. It's something that every single human has, right? And we need each other to be able to continue and sustain life, especially for surgeries and emergencies.
And it's the same. I mean, it's a different fight than what Dr. Charles Drew was fighting between segregation blood by a race, skin color. It's not race is man-made, but skin color. And I believe this group calls themselves Pure Bloods, that they don't do vaccinations, which is just, I find that disgusting.
It's interesting, and I just, like I'm in the business of saving lives and trying to get that information out there. So
yeah, but Lauren, we are at the end of our time, but I want to, this has been wonderful. I think people have really been engaged, and this is the most engaged that the Zoom guys have
thank you everyone on Zoom. I really appreciate it.
And we all did. I mean, it was really informative. I think you've got us thinking about donating for sure, and possibly even running
and hosting. We do have so many sites that are already established that could just use more donors. Legacy Emmanuel Hospital hosts a blood drive every single month. So it's not necessarily that you need to do all the work, but it's sharing that information that there are opportunities and encouraging people and encouraging young people to partake and really be part of their community is a really big, important piece to all of this.
But Lauren, thank you so much. And